Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
And that's right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Cramer, alongside my co-host, Daniel Bobo Kurlan. And Dan, how you doing today, buddy?
It's doing fine. Still a little bit shocked for that loss first round. I mean, what could I say? If we felt lifeless in that last game, this didn't feel like the Mets all year. This team had a lot of fight in us all year, and then this game we lose. We lost in a blowout. I'm not sure if the guy was cheating or not. I just know maybe it may have been one of Buck's not so great decisions that decision he made.
Yeah, I
But
agree. I mean, that was a hard loss to take on this past Sunday night, right after we recorded our bonus show, which people seem to like our bonus show. Dan, how did you like doing that?
I liked it. I thought it went great. I just wish it would have been right before a better outcome, of course.
Yeah, no
But
doubt
yeah,
about that.
and I'd have probably, I don't know how my remote survived this one because I may have tossed my remote that somehow to break the batteries and everything were still intact. I just dropped it like upset, like I was like shocked. And it still shocks me. Like it's a little difficult to even look at the playoffs now.
Yeah,
It's
and there's so much going on in the playoffs too. I mean, when you look around the league, you got the Phillies in there, the Seattle Mariners, the Guardians, quote unquote, whatever their new name is going against the Yankees. So that there are a lot of big series going on around, but it's just so weird that the Mets season ended so abruptly.
yeah. It's like I felt like I sometimes get weary about planning things in October because I know the possibility my Mets in the playoffs. I don't want to miss it. So it's like difficult for me to make plans in October. Uh,
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we don't have to worry about that this year.
Believe me, I'm already just gonna be at a concert today. Game one of the World Series is gonna be. I'm gonna get to see Bandmate live at. I believe I don't know if I pronounced the name of the venue right because I've never been to this venue. Irving Plaza.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah,
Yeah,
Irving Plaza.
and I've got it, and I've probably got some good Dr. Scholl's ready because it's a standing room venue. So I'm gonna have to stand up for a bit for this one, but it's worth it to get to see this band live because I've been a fan of them. I mean, they're amazing live. I don't know if you've ever watched any of your videos yourself.
Yeah, I've only known them because you've spoken about them. Actually, you brought them up on the show too in the past. And yeah, it's cool that you're gonna get to see them, at Irving Plaza. And so what that would be game one of the World Series? You're saying that's the same day?
Yeah, that's they. As a matter of fact, if I would have had a purchase opportunity for World Series tickets, I was purposely going to buy the day that would have been Game Two.
Very yeah, it's cool you get to see it, but it also sucks that we don't have to worry about the Mets playing in that game. But there really is so much going on right now, and we're obviously going to start with the Mets. But let's give a shout out to our two football teams that are playing great. We're probably not going to talk much about them today because we already covered their most recent games in this on the bonus show. So if you want to see our take on those games, you can check the bonus show out. And also the Jets and the Giants. We'll probably do a little preview of the Giants against the Ravens this coming up Sunday, and the Jets against the Packers at the end of the show. Though, we also got to talk about our New York Rangers, who are starting off pretty good so far as they beat the defending Eastern Conference champions, the Tampa Bay Lightning, to open the series, the season at Madison Square Garden last night. How'd you like seeing that?
That had me cheering after that tough loss. The way baseball season ended, I was able to have a moment that I was cheering. The Rangers won. I was going nuts the whole thing, lifting up my dog, Mr. Maloonigan, in victory. By the way, how that on the Eastside Dave's on the Davy Mac Sports program, I snuck Mr. Balloon to get on camera for a little bit.
Yes, that is true, by the way. Before we do get started, we have to acknowledge what a terrific appearance you had on the Eastside Dave show. That was so funny. I was watching it live as it was happening on YouTube. And the only thing I was about was that they didn't have the live chat open, so, or at least on my phone they didn't. So I couldn't live chat too. But that was such a great show. And you know what though? I do want to take something that Dave said on the show. Um, I do want to take it a little seriously though, because Dave was alluding to the fact on the show that City Field, might have a little curse action going on to it. To be
We're
honest, I
we're
agree with him. What do you think, man?
we're gonna perform an exorcism on opening day. All
That's
right.
that's the thing. You're right. And for the record, I am Catholic, so we can perform it as Eastside Dave was saying. But the thing is, I do agree with what he said because when you really think about it, Shea Stadium was where miracles happened. I mean, let's be honest. The Mets clinched the pennant there in '69. They won the World Series there in '69. They clinched the pennant there in '73. They clinched the pennant there in '86, except for when they clinched the National League, they clinched the NL East pennant in '86 there. They clinched in Houston in '86, but they won the World Series again in '86. They clinched in '88 there. They clinched in like everywhere you can imagine. The Mets clinched it, even the National League in 2000, the National League East in 2006. They did all that at home in front of the fans and everything. Ever since City Field opened, it seems like anytime they have a really big game at City Field, they don't win it. I mean, let's go back to the 2016 wild card game where they also got shut out. They didn't even show up in that game. They didn't show up in the biggest game of the year. Uh, you, you know, um, in Game 3 of this one, and the offense didn't even show up at all in Game 1. I mean, let's be honest. The We've seen big deficits erased by really good offenses in this postseason so far. I mean, the freaking Mariners came back; they were down 8-1. The Mets just, granted, Max Scherzer didn't put him in a good spot. The Mets offense didn't back him up at all. And then you think of all the other times they've clinched in the City Field era. It's been on the road. 2015, they clinched in Cincinnati. They clinched the NLDS in LA. They clinched the pennant that year, the National League, in Chicago.
And
Even
then
right?
Philadelphia in 2016.
Exactly. You're right.
Me, because I was there, if you remember.
Good
I was
call.
so kind of, even though it was on the road, they kind of had me there. They had me present there for that. Also, I'm under the weird conspiracy that I gotta attend more than the number of the year is next year. So here, I think maybe it wasn't. I gotta attend at least 24 games next year.
I like the commitment. How many games did you go to this year?
I believe it was like I don't remember the stat. I think maybe 22 during a regular season.
Okay, so you're like even.
Yeah, maybe 23 counting the regular season. I got to look up the exact number. I'm just remembering by heart. I got to look up the stats again on the ballpark app because it listed on the ballpark app the amount. You know how that app works.
That is the cool thing about this app that they do show all your stats like that. I love that.
Yeah, so I'll be able to list what I attended in how many games I attended in 2020 and 22, but also noted that I do count doubleheaders as having attended 2 games. If I attended both ends of the doubleheader, that means that one day I attended 2 games.
I agree. I'm with you on that. As a matter of fact, you remember me and you attended a doubleheader back in 2019.
Yeah, exactly. I remember. I remember that game. That game just felt like Shades of Shea Stadium. The way that come from behind win just reminded me of those times with Mike Piazza.
Yeah, that was great. Jacob DeGrom, he won the game in the day game, and then Pete Alonso hit a big home run in the nightcap, and the Mets beat the Marlins 2 straight.
Yeah, and I remember that come from behind win that 8th inning when Pete hit that home run.
Hmm.
That nuts. It felt like sunning out of the Shea Stadium years ago. still remember, like maybe I was around 18 years old, maybe. I was remember this game in Shea Stadium, Mets against the Braves.
Oh yeah,
We
the 10-run comeback.
Yeah, I was there for that. I was in the upper deck of Shea for that.
That is awesome. I remember I was watching that game at home, and that's one of my favorite games ever.
Yeah, that ballpark felt like it was shaking. That I remember, like Shea felt like it was shaking. That stadium was packed that night.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that was like late
That was,
June in 2000.
yeah,
Yeah,
that else getting to see that game getting to be at that game in person.
yeah,
I'll never get that memory. Like what some of the one of those amazing memories I felt like seemed to always happen when Piazza was in his prime.
yeah. I still can't believe that Bobby Cox left Terry Mulholland in to face Piazza there.
Like
Piazza hit that line drive home run right down the line, and as soon as it came off the bat, you knew it was gone.
exactly. Those are great times. I hope to see those put even more in the future, and hopefully we do the right thing and re-sign DeGrom.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, well, we will actually get into that because there is so much to talk about with that. There are so many free agents for the Mets now. I mean, let's cover the series real quick. Obviously, we talked about it on the bonus show. The Mets got knocked around in Scherzer's only playoff start. They lost 7-1 that first game or whatever the final was, or something like that. I think 7-1. Then the next night, the Mets actually came back and won that game, 7-3 behind DeGrom, who he didn't have his best stuff, but he got the job done, got the W. Um, can't can't complain about that.
he
Then game three.
pulled DeGrom. He always, even when he having his best day, he still keeps the team in the game. That's what we asked for, and he delivered.
Yep, he had that bulldog mentality and got the job done, and that's all you can ask for. Everybody wants perfection out of Jacob DeGrom, but I'm not going to complain if in a playoff game with your season on the line, he pitched good enough through 99 pitches and gutted his way through against a really good lineup. I'm not going to sit here and complain about that.
That's the it factor that makes DeGrom the great pitcher he is his ability to do that.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt about it. On
I left, I would feel as devastated as those people in 1977. Did I get the year correct? 1977. I forget if it's 76 or 77 when that tragic day happened.
what when
You're
Seaver
there?
left?
Yeah. Was it
Yeah,
77?
yeah,
77.
June 15th, 1977. You're right.
Yeah, I do not want to see a repeat of that. I hear plenty of Met fans older than me talk about how sad they were. I do not want that to happen here. And I trust Steve Cohen, who grew up a Mets fan and stuff, knows how tragic it was and does not want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, and there are so many decisions to make that fuck it. Let's just get into it right now, man. Um, I mean, so obviously, me and you are both for bringing back Jacob DeGrom. They have to figure out a way to get it done. I recently was reading a story where they said that they cited someone close to DeGrom who said that at the beginning of the season, he thought that there was a 0% chance DeGrom was coming back here, which shocks me, actually. I didn't think that at any point DeGrom was hell bent on leaving here, but apparently earlier this season he was. And now that same person came back and said that at the end of this season, he gives it a 50-50 shot that he comes back to the Mets, which is also a little surprising. Now, have you heard that, Dan? And if you haven't, what do you think about that?
I heard that that's going to be 50-50. I feel if DeGrom gets the right offer, he'll come back. And I know Steve Cohen. He's not insanely crazy like George Steinbrenner was, like call these executive meetings after, but he's taking this seriously that he wants to try to win and better what happened this year.
Yeah, I mean they won 101 games and came up small in really if you look at the six biggest games of the season, the three against Atlanta and the three against San Diego, the Mets went 1-5. 1-5. Terrible. terrible. You can't do that if you're gonna be a winning team. And let's just hope that, as many of the players said after this was just the first step. Because who knows? Let's give
Yep.
Steve Cohen the benefit of the doubt, right?
And the first step is going to be in this off season. Has to be
Yep.
he has to make those big moves during this off season if we're going to show that. I
Now,
mean, there's three players that I feel are key factors in that might want to re-sign is of course the Grom, possibly Diaz, and even a Nimmo. Also, I think what's also going to play a factor. I don't know how much this is going to be true or how much Steve Cohen's willing to go all in on this, but Aaron Judge is a potential free agent, so I feel it would only make sense for him to even try to kind of take a pulse on what it might take to get him here. That
um,
also that also might depend on Brian Cashman because I'm sure Brian Cashman knows maybe how much of a real devastating loss that could be Judge not returning to the Yankees. So that could play a factor.
yeah, I don't expect Judge to leave the Yankees, but I do expect the Mets to at least try to talk to him. And hey, maybe just like a lot of people didn't think the Mets could convince Max Scherzer to come here, but they did. And who knows, if you throw enough money at somebody, anything's possible. And with the Mets, you did mention a couple of key names. Now you mentioned Edwin Diaz, who rumors are so far, what I've seen guys like Andy Martino from SNY report is that the Mets are interested in bringing him back, and Edwin Diaz is interested in coming back to the Mets. And supposedly, this is a deal that has one of the best chances to get done before free agency begins after the World Series. I think the World Series it's 10 days or a week after the World Series free agency begins. So the Mets would have that window technically between now and the end of the end of the World Series. So the Mets do have this chance to bring him back, and Andy Martino at least is saying that is a possibility. Brandon Nimmo, I think the same thing. I think if the Mets value their culture at all, this is a word we've heard nonstop. This is a guy that you produced. I heard the post game interview, which I don't even know why I left this stuff on just to watch, maybe just to torture myself. But I was watching a lot of that post game stuff after the Mets lost. And to see Brandon Nimmo 45 minutes after the game ended, still in his uniform, walking around the clubhouse, just looking around, taking it in, hoping, you could tell he was hoping that this wasn't the last time that he was walking through the Mets clubhouse, at least the home side of the Mets clubhouse. And you could tell this is a guy that just you literally they had to rip his uniform off his back probably that night when he was getting into bed. His wife probably wasn't going to let him in for wearing that crap. He you could tell this is a guy that bleeds orange and blue, and you don't want to let those guys go. And he was one of the few guys. I mean, obviously he didn't really do anything in the final game 3 because the only guy that did anything in that game was the Pete Alonso solo base hit. That's the only thing he did. That's the only thing anybody did that game. But Brandon Nimmo had a pretty good series, so I think it's pretty vital to bring him back, right, Dan?
Yeah, I fully believe so. I mean, I hope this guy sticks around. This is a guy I've seen come up in the minors. Like I remember him when he was in the Cyclones when they were then a low A ball team. So I saw Brendan Nimmo. He was just out of high school,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
player,
and
and I got pictures with him and stuff back then. He,
yeah, and a lot of people criticized the Mets when they took Brandon Nimmo because you mentioned he was just out of high school. This is a guy whose high school didn't even have a baseball team. He had to play like, I forget the name of the league, but whatever league he had to play in, like he had to specifically go out of his way to play in a special league because he loved baseball so much. Growing up rooting for the Colorado Rockies over there in Wyoming because they didn't have a baseball team in Wyoming. That was the closest team he played for. This is a guy that loved baseball and plays baseball the right way and the Mets took a chance on, and he even mentioned that how, it meant a lot to him that the Mets took a chance on him and drafted him in the first round when a lot of other teams wouldn't have taken that chance. Who knew what Brandon Nimmo was going to become? This is a guy they drafted in 2011, and he didn't crack the big leagues until 2016, and really didn't establish himself until about 2018 when he had that breakout season. So, I think Brandon Nimmo believes that he owes the Mets at least, the opportunity to bring him back. And let's just hope the Mets take him up on that. This is a guy who scored 100 runs and had a great season for the Mets this year.
Yeah, exactly. I hope he comes back. He was a great player. I hope somehow they could work out a deal. And thank God we have an owner that won't shy away from a player having Scott Boras as his agent.
Yeah, exactly. Now that's not, Scott Boras isn't a four-letter word anymore, around the Mets because it doesn't matter. The Mets can pay guys as much as they want, really. And, one of those guys actually, too, I'm not sure if he's a Boras client, but another guy looking to get paid who didn't really pitch too well or come up big at all for the Mets in his two biggest starts of the season, Chris Bassett. Now, what do you do? Do you want to bring the band back together and bring Chris Bassett back? Or after what you saw in the two biggest games this season, are you ready to move on?
I feel Chris Bassick is a hit or miss. I feel he might get in on a low deal maybe.
I don't know. He's going to be looking for, pretty decent money. I would say he's going to be looking for anywhere from 15 to 20 million a season, if not more.
Yeah, so I think hit or miss he might be gone
So you're getting
potentially.
like a 50-50 shot.
Yeah, exactly. Him I really feel is a 50-50 shot.
Hmm.
Also, it also might depend on what, like, I'm assuming we re-signed DeGrom. We might also re-sign some. We might sign some other pitchers on the free agent market. I don't
True.
know who's on the free agent going to be on the free agent market this year.
Well, there's two other guys too that we have to look at in our own pitching staff, and I'm pretty sure that they both have options that the Mets could pick up, and I think one's a mutual option with Taiwan Walker, where I think Taiwan Walker can become a free agent if he wants, but then he and the Mets could also agree to pick up a decent option. I want to say it's in the range of 10 to 12 million, which would, I don't mind Taiwan, but uh, I'm I'm open to bringing him back. And then same thing with um, you know, Carlos Carrasco, who has a club option, I believe, on his, so that the Mets have their decision whether they're going to pick him up for somewhere around 15 million, and then he'll be back for a potential final season with the Mets at the age of 36. What do you think about those two pitchers, Dan? Would you pick up either of those options if you had a chance, or at least one of them?
I don't know what there is really anything on the market this year. I feel like pitching's kind of a very thin market during the off season.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I haven't done extensive research on the pitchers market yet this year, but one guy who I believe can become a free agent. Um, and boy, this would really be throwing all your dice in the middle of the table right there, laying your cards down if you went this route. But Justin Verlander could become a free agent. So is that a guy that you would say, let's try to, you know, get three potential Hall of Famers to top this rotation, with Scherzer hopefully being joined by DeGrom, and then, you try to rope Justin Verlander into that if he can be lured away from Houston or anywhere else. Uh, would you be open to that, or is a 40-year-old guy in that mix a little rough?
I feel Verlander could be on a 1 year deal, maybe, because I'm not sure how much Verlander has in the tank now.
Hmm. I mean,
He
he
could,
did have a fantastic season. He's probably going to win the Cy Young in the American League.
yeah. So I feel he's going to get at least 2 years out of this deal. I feel
Hmm.
so.
And he's in good shape too.
Yeah, so might be one worth a shot, worth a look.
Yeah, because
I'm in old New York. He's pitched in the playoffs before. That's going to be the big factor: is how well will this guy be able to handle pitching in New York?
true.
It's different. It's a whole. And he pitched in Detroit and Houston, two places I feel aren't really having high expectations to win a championship.
And you are right about that too, because apparently the Yankees have pursued him in the past, and he hasn't been too keen on either coming here as a potential free agent or coming here as a in a trade. So I think he has kind of shied away from New York in the past. So
Yeah,
it would be a little surprising if he could be talked in here.
yeah. Another one. If we're gonna look into next year, because I'm not sure the chances of the Mets trading for him this year, because I feel they're like not really willing to. I feel like trading away prospects isn't a big thing they're afraid to do. I feel maybe next year we could see a Shohei Ohtani of all people as a Met, in part because if you looked at his no trade clause, the only team willing to accept a trade to apparently is the Mets, because apparently he has faith in Billy Epler.
That's in Shohei Ohtani's contract, really?
Yeah, yeah, that he will that a no trade clause, and
Hmm.
the only trade clause is the Mets.
Wow, and that does make a lot of sense because, as you mentioned, he has a relationship with Billy Epler, where Billy Epler was one of the main guys who recruited him to the Angels in the first place, and was able to sell him on the idea of going to the Angels. So that does make a lot of sense. Wow, that's a very interesting fact. I'd love to see Otani on this team.
I think maybe he feels Billy Epler could help him maybe be able to handle being here, because there'll be high expectations with that. I mean, he's done that, and he's done everything he's done in Anaheim, which I'll give him credit for. But he's never played on a team with such high expectations like the Mets. It's going to be high expectations.
No
If a
doubt
player
about it.
put up the numbers at Otani, we're going to expect what he's doing in Anaheim. We're going to fans fans are going to expect that in New York.
Oh yeah, they're definitely going to expect that, and because it's New York, they're going to expect more. He hit 34 home runs and drove in just about 100 runs. People in New York might be a little upset because after the big year he had last year, he hit 46. So but it would be just even this year where you could say that maybe his numbers were down slightly from last year offensively. If you put that big left-handed bat in the lineup, you know, between Alonso and Lindor, that makes the Mets lineup a whole lot deeper. And the absence of left-handed power, I mean, they tried to add it with Daniel Vogelback, but the absence of left-handed power in that lineup is, pretty evident. I mean, it looks like, you know, even though we saw McNeil hit 23 in 2019, I think that was a lot more about the ball that year than Jeff McNeil being a power hitter. He's a gap to gap hitter, and we saw it this year with him leading the league in batting, but he only hit 9 home runs, which I have no problem with, right?
He was more trying to get base hits. Exactly. He was trying to get base hits and doubles.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that was his strength finally, what he needed to do all along. Another one skill that needs to be that are two players that feel that could play a factor is being the fact that they seem to be obsessed with not wanting to trade prospects. Viennos and Alvarez could be potential to be a great DH, especially if this time, because next time we'll see him in a lineup, he'll probably get more at bats than he's been during the pennant race.
oh
I
yeah,
feel
I agree.
he'll get to maybe ease into the role, ease into being in the big leagues a little bit better during spring training.
Yeah,
'Cause
I believe that Francisco Alvarez will be the starting catcher next year.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I just have a feeling we're gonna see some Titanic shots at City Field. I mean, I seen him in the minor leagues. I saw footage this year when he was in Double A and Triple A, and I saw him the year before when he was in the Cyclones. The guy was a monster of a hitter. And I'm expecting once he's gotten the hang of, he hasn't really this year. He never really got, same thing with Viennos. They never really got a lot of time to get a hang of it. I also feel Beatty's another one that's gonna get. I feel like they once they've gotten the hang of the big, it's on.
Yeah, you're right about that, man. I mean, but I do think it was good that a lot that those guys you just mentioned, Beatty, Alvarez, and Vientos, that they did get a taste of the majors this year, and they did get a taste of being around a winning team. And even the other guy, Alvarez, being the only of the three to actually get at bat in the postseason, at least they were all kind of around that. So I think that was definitely a good learning experience for those guys. And we're gonna see a lot of the same young guys too, but a lot of these veterans could be different next year, as we have all the free agents that we've mentioned. Uh, One thing, there are two guys we know who are going to be there next year, and that's going to be Jeff McNeil and Pete Alonso. And I do want to make a call right now. I know I'm not the first, but I do want to make the call on this show right now to give both of those guys extensions right now. Lock up McNeil and lock up Alonso. Both those guys have done more than enough over the last couple of years to earn long-term deals. We see what the Braves have done down in Georgia and with pretty much all their young players. The most recent being Strider, giving him a big long-term deal. Jeff McNeil and Pete Alonso deserve to be taken care of. What do you think about that, Dan?
Yep, I think so. Definitely give those pay to man, as they seen David Ortiz keep saying in these think when he does these post shows on Fox. Pay to man.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, both these guys have earned it. Pete Alonso, multi-time All-Star. He led the league in RBIs this year. Jeff McNeil, multi-time All-Star, led the league in hitting this year. So these guys have earned it. They deserve to be, the rocks of this Met offense, and really, and them and Lindor, and hopefully, um, Brandon Nimmo, and also too next year, a guy who we know is going to be there is Marte. The Mets are going to have to look around and see what they're going to add. There's a couple of different things that would be very interesting to see. I also heard too that the Mets might kick the tires and see if the Texas Rangers want to move Marcus Semien. I don't know if that is going to happen because it seems like Texas, even though they had a rough year, I think they're hoping that they could reset next year and still compete. But I don't know. What would you think about that, Dan? If the Mets have a chance to get Marcus Semien on a rebound after a bad year, would you be open to it?
I'd be open to that one.
That's true, because maybe that could push Escobar to a bench situation, or you stick Semien at second base and put McNeil in the outfield. I guess there's a lot of options they would be able to do if they did make that move, but that it still doesn't seem likely to me because you have to depend on Texas doing a deal like that too. There are so many other things that we could talk about with the Mets right now. I mean, between what do you think before we move on? What do you think about Buck Showalter's handling of everything really? I mean, of not telling people about DeGrom starting, of what happened in that game with checking Musgrove's ear. Uh, what's your assessment of Buck after one full season and playoff run?
One full season, Buck has definitely righted the ship. He made us a winner again. I mean, he had the credibility to do it, and he showed it. I feel some little decisions like in the playoffs. I feel maybe he should have had the Grumps set the tone in game one. May have been a better decision. I feel than Scherzer.
True. I mean, you could definitely make that argument, especially with the way Max pitched. But I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that when he named Scherzer the starter for Game One, I didn't even blink because I understood going with Scherzer's, um, you know, his history. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Also, I feel maybe Buck shouldn't have. I mean, when he was behind all, when we were behind by a lot, maybe not do that whole thing that he went to with making the umpires check for foreign substance. Musgrove for foreign substance. Maybe not a good idea. I'm
Yeah,
still debating if there was or not. I'm not sure there was.
look,
Maybe
there's a lot of Met fans that are really trying to make the case that Joe Musgrove, um, you know, was a cheater. He completely cheated that night. He did this, he did that. Look, I don't know. I agree his ears looked weird, and I don't know, maybe he had something on earlier in the game and wiped it off, but to me, that's just a stretch. It didn't look to me like he was cheating. Well, at first it did. At first, I was curious about those ears, to be honest. But hey, the umpires came out and checked. They rubbed his ears. They did everything that they really could. He didn't find anything on there. Um, could Musgrove have gotten rid of it? Yeah, he could have, but I don't know. It just didn't seem that way to me. But I also don't kill Buck the way a lot of people, including Gary Cohen, after the game, who basically said it was Bush League what Buck did, and people like Kevin Kernan, who's a good sports writer, who I respect, even went as far as to say that Buck lost a lot of respect around the game that night, and I understand what they're saying, but I don't agree with that at all. I mean, don't you think that Joe Torre doesn't kick himself for not coming out and having Kenny Rogers inspected when he was cheating in 2006? With the Detroit Tigers that postseason. Uh, don't you think that Torre has some regret about that? I think Buck would have major regret if it turned out after the game that Musgrove wasn't cheating, right? Or he was cheating. I'm sorry, right?
yeah,
So I can't kill Buck for that, right, Dan?
yeah, I can't kill him for that doing that. He just did what he had to. The guy was sticking up for his players, and
Exactly.
he needed a manager to field this team. Get better. I feel I feel we can't waste having a manager like Buck Showalter. We got to have this team have to. We need to win and be committed to winning.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Buck has done a good job of changing the way things go around here and changing the feel in the clubhouse. You heard Lindor talk about how people, around the clubhouse, respect the game more and are more prepared and just seemingly have their head in the game more. Since Buck has been around here, and I thought when I heard Lindor saying that was big praise to Buck because that goes to show that even though on the outside we might have, before we knew other things about Mickey Callaway too, we might have not minded guys like Mickey Callaway and Luis Rojas, but behind the scenes, maybe they weren't demanding enough of their players to be as prepared as Buck Showalter is. So I think that's a good thing for Buck, and it definitely makes the Mets seem like a more professional, win-oriented organization, right, Dan?
Yeah, I feel that, and I feel by 2024 we're gonna by 2024. Just my gut feeling.
Hey, well,
I
there's going to be a lot of changes this offseason, so it
I,
may be next year.
I said that, and I feel like maybe next year could be the year we finally do it. I I just felt the moment Steve Cohen bought this team that we were setting our sights for that. By 2024, we'll have at least one championship.
True. And you know what? As disappointing as this ending to the season was, and frankly embarrassing as it was, because of course everybody clowned the Mets now after the Mets lost that game. All you heard on Twitter again was LOL Mets. But I can't sit here and LOL Mets because they won 101 games and lost to a tough team in the playoffs. I mean, sure, on paper, the Mets were much better than, the San Diego Padres, but the Padres had a good team. Anything can happen in a 3-game series, as we're seeing right now in the LDS too, and everybody calls that a short series, and that's 5 games. So look, the fact that the Mets lost 2 out of 3, I'm extremely disappointed. I'm angry. I'm definitely angry, no doubt about it, as a lot of Met fans have the right to be. But you know what though? It doesn't feel like Wilpon era angry, where you had to bite your fingernails and hope they were going to sign Daniel Murphy. 3 years, 39 million. You couldn't give that to a guy who did that in the postseason for you and had played his entire career for you. That was ridiculous. They let him walk. And we just know that unless the player doesn't want to come back for whatever reason, that the Mets are going to have every opportunity to bring every single player back. And that feels a lot better than it did in that Wilpon era, right, Dan?
I just feel just a lot better under this ownership than we were during the Wilpon era. Also, I have to say a lot of people probably. I always tell a lot of my out of state, out of country friends that if you're looking for locals, you're more the ones that are wearing Mets hats are more likely to be locals than the ones wearing Yankee hats.
That's
They
true
just
because anybody can wear a Yankee hat.
acting things like I feel like you see at you're likely to find be talking to a local.
It's true. You're right. I definitely agree with that. Unless it's Apu from The Simpsons, who was wearing his Mets hat and said that the nine Mets are his favorite squadron. That's uh, that's kind of a giveaway. Unless you see somebody like that, then I do agree with you that it probably is a local wearing a Mets hat.
Wait, a little fact about the guy about Apu that's a little connection to the Mets. The guy who does the voice of Apu, Hank Azaria,
Mhm.
he is Hank Azaria. So it's obvious he would sneak a reference to his team in that.
Very true. Very true. And so with that, let's move on from the Mets now, as I think we dissected that as good as we can. And we've got other things to talk about right now, as our New York Rangers. Their season's just getting started. Obviously, it wasn't the first game of the year. There was two games played over in Europe, with the Nashville Predators winning both of them. But the first game played in the United States this year was at Madison Square Garden, a rematch of the Eastern Conference Finals, Rangers Lightning, and the Rangers took that game 3-1. And what did you think seeing a couple of these new guys like Trocheck out there, and seeing Kravstov unfortunately get hurt really early on? What were your first impression of the Rangers this year?
I just felt this was a better prepared team that we were ready to up this game to our next to the next level. I mean, I feel like this team is hungry from that coming up short like that. We had got to the Eastern Conference Finals. We had a 2-0 lead going into game 3 and we coughed up game 3.
Yeah, they should have been up 3-0. You're right.
Like we were struggling from there on out. But I feel this team has unfinished business and they're gonna play all the way to the last second, this Rangers team, and have a very exciting hockey season.
Yeah,
Um,
and you know what? One of the really standout things from last night was too, is last year, and for the past couple of years, really, the Rangers have had a really, really tough time winning faceoffs. It was really just a struggle. I was a big fan of Ryan Strome, but he was always a guy whose faceoff numbers was probably right around 45%, and even under that a lot of the time. So I like Ryan Strom a lot, but his inability to win faceoffs really put the Rangers behind the eight ball a lot. And adding a guy like Trocheck, who last night won 10 of 16 faceoffs, I think made a big difference. Especially, I noticed it on the power play where they scored. Trocheck went and took a big faceoff that kept it in the zone. And that's a thing that they really didn't have last year. You had to have Mika taking a lot of those faceoffs, not letting him get into his spot where he was able just to snipe the puck last night, and get it past for on the power play. At least he was also able to add an amazing shorthanded goal, two goals by Zibanejad last night. Really hoping that that's setting Mika up for a big season. Um, but yeah, I mean, what did you see from that last night, Dan? It was cool seeing the Rangers win so many faceoffs, right?
yeah, it was cool seeing it. I just felt like I saw a completely different team than last year. This was a very fiery team, right from the get go, right from day one. We were on all cylinders.
Yeah,
So I'm looking forward to to being on this ride that's going to be the 2022-2023 season. It's I'm gonna be on edge this whole season.
No doubt
And
about it. Yeah.
I have an even thicker playoff beard than the one I had last year. I'm hoping it gets less.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and they had a hell of a playoff run last year. Like you mentioned, they got to Game 6 in the Eastern Conference Finals against the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions. So, really can't be upset with as far as they got last year, and they've just build on it now. And a couple of things. What did you think about Capo Caco playing on the top line last night? I really liked seeing him get that chance. He finally played, 17, 18 minutes. Had some good chances there playing with Zibanejad and Kreider on that top line. I love seeing Kako given that opportunity.
Yeah, I was loving that too. I was loving it. I mean, I was just loving seeing Copro get that opportunity as well. We were like, I just feel overall we just looked a lot different this year than last year.
Yeah, and then even too, I was a little skeptical of giving Kravstov the second line right wing spot. Initially, I wasn't too sure about that. I didn't think that he had a good enough preseason and doesn't have a good enough resume overall to get that spot right off the bat. But they gave him the opportunity, and unfortunately, he got hurt almost immediately. I really don't understand how that Victor Hedman play wasn't at least a roughing and maybe even holding against the boards there. It was very strange that nothing was even called, and especially after he got hurt. And also too, I mean, Hedman's a rough player to begin with, so it also says that you just hope that maybe Kravtsov isn't one of these guys who comes out to be a little injury prone off the bat. So got to keep your fingers crossed there. I hope he's okay. But what did you think about after that? After his injury, they bumped up Alexi Lafreniere, who normally would play on the left side. They had him playing right wing on that second line with Panarin and Trocheck. I thought that was an interesting combination too.
I think that's an important one. I feel he's going to get even bigger. It's going to get better price time Lafreniere is getting, hopefully, this year. So I'm expecting big things from Lafreniere this year.
Yeah, I really hope, before the season, unfortunately, he hasn't really blown me away yet. I haven't, I was hoping to see maybe a big preseason out of him where he really, really stood out and, really took me by storm, almost kind of you know, like Jimmy Vesey really impressed me in this preseason. And I was very happy they gave him the contract, then he made the team. I'm a fan of Jimmy Vesey. He does all the little things. I like him being on this team. I think he also has a chance to score some goals if given the opportunity. On the other hand, Lafreniere, I haven't really seen too much yet. He had a couple of good opportunities yesterday, so my hopes are high from him. But he's a guy the Rangers really need to have a breakout season this year, right?
Exactly. I feel that his play a big.
Yeah, and it's all going to depend on another guy too that they have, especially if he's going to be playing right wing for an extended period of time. We really need to see Artemi Panarin be able to grab the game by the horns again. I mean, no, I'm not taking away anything Panarin did last year. He had 74 assists, fourth most in the NHL, 96 points. He was right up there with all the top players. But he only had 22 goals. And when his first year when he came here, he had 32 goals. He was, just unstoppable that season from both ends. The Rangers need to see more of that first year Panarin than they've seen from the last couple of years. And he even said that he needs to add, little. He's had a little bit of a passive nature in his game the last year or two because, especially with the Rangers trying to win, he didn't want to make any costly mistakes. By his high risk, high reward play style sometimes. And the Rangers really need to see the best of Panarin now, right, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe he needs to take a little more of a chance this year.
Yeah, yeah. Just maybe I understand in the playoffs toning it down a little bit, which unfortunately could affect his production there too. And it did, but he still had a couple of big goals this postseason. As we remember, he closed out Pittsburgh. So, he just has to play smart, but maybe in the regular season, take more chances because the Rangers definitely need that dynamic Artemi Panarin to compete in the top half of the league this year.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully we we everyone lives up to expectations, and we could have a monster year.
No doubt about it. And another guy who set himself up to have a monster year last night, aside from a couple of the guys we mentioned so far, like especially Zibanejad, um, is Igor Shesterkin. I mean, how could you mention the Rangers and their win last night and the Rangers overall as a team and not mention Igor? Um, the guy has really just been so good since he got to the NHL with this team. And last night was no different. He looked at the top of his game, only, over 30 shots. Or no, I'm sorry, it was close to 30 shots, though. He only allowed one goal. It was on the power play, which you can't knock him for. I mean, what goalie at this point hasn't allowed a power play goal to Steven Stamkos? So you can't knock him for that. But the guy did such a great job. He kept the Rangers in the game until they were able to score a couple of goals late and take control. And you have to just give all the credit in the world to Igor. Looks like he's going to be in the line, in the running for a second straight Vezina again this year. And I would expect nothing less, right, Dan?
Yep, exactly. I would expect nothing less than a Vesna season from Igor. He's been, I mean, the season's going to start and end with how well he is at goal.
No doubt about it, man. If he slips in play, even a little bit, this Rangers team could be in big, big trouble because, even though we hope that they can have a balanced scoring unit, they do seem kind of top heavy, especially when, you're running a fourth line out there right now of Ryan Carpenter. Tomorrow against Minnesota, at least, it looks like it's going to be Ryan Carpenter at center, Dryden Hunt coming into the lineup for the first time this year because, obviously they didn't have him start game one with Kraustov in the lineup. Kraustov coming out puts him in down on the fourth line though. And they're going to elevate Goodrow. They're going to elevate Lafreniere. So it'll definitely have ripples throughout the lineup, not having Kraustov in there. And you just got to hope that you can get enough scoring from that top six because the bottom six is going to be a little weak. I mean, Dryden Hunt, Ryan Carpenter, and Ryan Reeves on your fourth line might be a gritty line, might be a good line that's going to put a hurt on those guys, but they're not going to be putting up big numbers offensively. And you just got to hope that maybe that third line that's being centered by Philip Hedl can maybe get something going in the top nine there. But I don't know that bottom six seems a little weak to me offensively, right, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. I feel that bottom six might be a little bit of a sketchy point of our team this year.
Yeah, yeah, and it's going to be, probably dependent on some late trades too to fill that bottom six out. And one guy that I'm always going to have my eye on right now, who's on a 1 year deal, if the Ottawa Senators aren't having a good year, would be bringing Tyler Mott back because I think you throw him into that bottom six, and I don't know how much he's going to add offensively, but he's definitely going to have a little bit more of that bite that you'd like the Rangers to have for a playoff run, like he added last year. So I would look for that too because I think the Rangers like they got out of him last year, and even though they couldn't fit him into the budget this year, I could see him coming in the future. What do you think about that?
Yeah, too. See a lot of big eyes all on that trade deadline when it gets to that point of the season.
Yeah, exactly. And we're just about to wrap up over here too. But I did want to talk about the Yankees before we get out of here. Unfortunately, we do have to talk a little bit about the Yankees. As you know, they won their first playoff game last night, 4-1 against Cleveland. Garrett Cole looked pretty good. They got some home runs. One from Harrison Bader came in a midseason trade, obviously, when they gave up Jordan Montgomery. By the way, the Cardinals who made that trade aren't playing anymore. So Harrison definitely happy that he's on the Yankees at the moment from Bronxville, New York. So kind of feels like a hometown thing to him. Um, Also, too, they got another big home run from Anthony Rizzo, who the Yankees are getting some production from. A lot of these guys. What did you think of that win last night, Dan? I mean, a lot of these big names showing up for the Yankees, and they come away with a 4-1 win. Really doesn't look like Cleveland has much punch offensively. How do you expect that series to go down?
Feel like Cleveland just looks overmatched. I was saying that. I mean, I was like talking to someone I know from Cleveland, and I was saying, I'm sorry, but like Cleveland looks overmatched in a series. I mean, as much as I'm a Met fan that does not like the Yankees so much, I had no, I have no, I mean, I respect Yankee fans and all, but it's like I'm a Met fan. I really can't root for the Yankees. It's not in my DNA to do that. But Cleveland just looks overmatched in this playoffs, and I really honestly feel the toughest competition. Well, I think the National League, there's more tough competition in the National League than there is in the AL. I Competition in the American League for the Yankees could be Houston.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think what we're really heading towards right now is a Yankees Houston ALCS. The Mariners could have dealt them a big blow, but boy, what a crazy comeback win they had. The Astros did the other day as Seattle was cruising. They were up big, and then before you know it, it's 8-5 in the ninth inning, and oh no, I'm sorry, it was 7-5 in the ninth inning, and Jordan Alvarez crushes a walk-off 3-run home run against Robbie Ray, who took over for former Met Paul Sewald. So boy, I mean, that was such a crazy turn of events because it looked like the Mariners were going to cruise to a game 1 win, and Cleveland said not so fast, and the Yankees didn't even let Cleveland dream. um, Cleveland was taken out pretty easily in this game, but by the Yanks 4-1, and both big teams lead 1 games to none. So I think we're looking at a Yankees Astros ALCS, and it seems like you agree with that, right, Dan?
Yeah, it looks like I agree with that. I mean, I looked at the highlights of that game, that Houston Seattle game, and that was like, whoa, they really like it looks like they uh, have, I don't know, they have that playoff experience. I feel that they were able to mount that comeback.
Yeah, I don't know why they'd put Robbie Ray in that spot too, man. I mean, I understand that they were up against it, and Paul Sewell looked like he wasn't getting the job done, and who else you get to turn to? But putting Robbie Ray in that spot was just such a predictable thing to me that he was going to fail in that spot because Robbie Ray's not used to that. He hasn't done that all year. He you don't know what you're going to get out of him when you put him in a spot like that. So I thought that was a very poor choice by the Mariners, but really awesome win for the Astros, and that's the same thing too. I did want to make that comparison. We were talking about Scherzer earlier with the Mets, kind of putting the Mets in a hole where he got knocked around 4 innings, 7 runs. Well, guess what Justin Verlander did in game 1? 4 innings, 7 runs. The same thing Max Scherzer did. And guess what the difference was between his teams? His team showed up offensively, backed him up, and got him off the hook. Now, I'm not saying that Scherzer deserved to get off the hook, but guess what? If the Mets were as good offensively as we saw at times this year, they would have done exactly what the Houston Astros did: chip away and then finally have a big inning and win the game. And the Mets just weren't able to do that. They weren't able to back up their ace like the Astros were with their winning pedigree.
Kind of Billy up, where maybe should have made some better moves during that trading deadline. I feel, because if you're going, really need to make those moves. And I don't know if the small moves were the necessary moves that needed to be made.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, the Darren Ruff move, that was terrible. Like the Mets gave up more for Darren Ruff. If you look at on paper, the Mets gave up more for Darren Ruff than the Atlanta Braves gave up to the Anaheim Angels to get Raciel Iglesias, who is still currently making a big impact positively on their bullpen. And the Mets couldn't touch since they got him. So that's a win for the Braves, and that's a big L for the Mets. Darren Ruff was terrible as a Met. You know, Daniel Vogelback had his moments, and he's probably going to be back next year. Ruff won't, but Vogelback will because I believe that he still is arbitration eligible. So I don't think that that the Mets could lose him unless they choose not to give him arbitration or whatever, just let him become a free agent. So I guess that isn't a decision to be made. I doubt they let him walk though. Vogelback had his moments last year. If it was up to you, Dan, what do you think? Would you keep Vogelback in the fold, or would you let him walk?
I probably like Vogelback in the fold, but I feel on the days that Alvarez has off, maybe Alvarez would be DHing a bit more when Alvarez is behind the plate.
Yeah, especially against lefties too. You throw him in there, and you know you just know that that Alvarez is going to take a couple of big swings. No doubt about that. You know, so hey, that's where we're at right now. The Yankees now don't play until tomorrow night. So I mean, if people are watching this, it'll be tonight that you'll be watching the Yankee game. What's that, Dan?
Heard weather permitting, because I hear the weather is going to be a little sketchy. I've been seeing some Yankee fans that have tickets to the game are worried about the weather tomorrow.
Really? Okay. Okay. Well, you know, let's hope they're able to get the game in because you know it stinks getting playoff games washed out.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Plus, I feel it also is a pain in the. As much as much as I don't like the Yankees, I feel it is a pain in the ass for the people who have to go through a lot of work to make these games happen. I mean, beyond the baseball part of it, everything that needs to be done to get the stadium ready for game day. You know, all the people that are working there, it's a pain in the ass for people to have to be there longer than they have to, having to be there extra days.
no doubt
Because
about it. No doubt about it, man. And you know, and then it's especially too for the fans showing up. It's always last second that cancel it because the last thing they want to do is cancel it.
plus, got to remember another thing. This is New York, a city that leans heavily on public transportation. The MTA puts in a lot of effort to make sure that the trains are running on game day.
True.
I don't know about the reputation at Yankee Stadium, but I know at Citi Field they will always have extra trains. Like going to the game, they'll have plenty of trains going to the game, and on the return trip, they'll have plenty extra trains on the return trip.
Yeah, it's
They
true.
goes off as much as possible without a hitch to handle the high amount of traffic that's going to be crowding the train stations on game day.
Yeah, I mean, a
On
lot of work goes into that. So,
so
yeah,
I believe they do the same thing on the 4 train. I believe so.
no doubt about it.
And there's a lot of work the MTA goes through to make sure those trains are running, to make sure the transportation is the main transportation that stops at that stadium is coordinated properly.
Yeah, yeah, you're right, man. So, hey, let's just hope the Yankees are able to get that game in tomorrow. It's going to be a real interesting matchup too, as it's going to be Yankees Guardians, obviously game two, 7:30 tomorrow night, and it's going to be Bieber, who you know he had a decent season this year, 13-8, 2.88 ERA, going against nasty Nestor Cortez, who brings his 12-4 and 2.44 ERA into that game. You know, obviously it's going to be a really cool matchup tomorrow night at Yankee Stadium. The other matchup going on tomorrow is Astros and Mariners. So we both pretty much made our picks in those series. We think it's going to be Astros Yankees coming out. But for the other ones, before we get out of here, Dan, because we're just about to wrap up, who's your pick? Atlanta or Philly? You think Philly's going to pull that off, or you pick the Braves?
I think maybe Philly might be pulling this one off a little bit. I think they
Really?
might be running a lot of hot momentum going into this, as much as I don't like the Phillies. But they also, but I feel it could be Phillies Dodgers, because
Wow, very very
they
interesting. Shades of the old days back in 2008, 2009.
yeah, exactly, might end a little bit different, because I feel that Los Angeles has a bit more pitching than Philly does.
So you're picking the Dodgers to get through the Padres too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that the Padres won't even win a game in that series, which also, by the way, would be a kick in the balls to the Mets because I hear everybody talking about how good the Padres are, Don't forget, Padres got this, Padres got that. If the Padres don't even manage to win a game against the Dodgers, that makes the Mets look even worse. So let's get that out of the way. And with the Phillies, you're picking the Phillies over the Braves, you said?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm actually picking the Braves. I don't expect the Phillies beat the Braves. I'd be very surprised. And game two of that is just about to get underway right now. Dodgers and Padres will be later tonight, and both American League games pick up tomorrow night. So hey, I think we did a great job tonight, Dan. We covered a lot of ground. Before we get out of here, do you have anything to plug?
For my Twitter, Bobo103NYC on Twitter, Bobo718DK on Instagram, Daniel Kurlan on YouTube.
That's right. Make sure to check out Dan all over there. And also, if you didn't watch yesterday's or 2 days ago Davy Max Sports program, we will include that in the description for tonight's episode. So check that out. Dan's appearance was great, a lot of fun.
In mind, don't take the stuff I said on the show seriously, because it's stuff we say in a joke. You know how the Dave show works.
Exactly. It's for the show. It's for the show. So come on. It's a lot of fun. So if you have a good sense of humor and you want to see an absolutely hilarious show that's about sports, check out the Davy Max Sports program, especially Dan's appearance earlier this week. And if you want, before we get out of here, check me out on Twitter at my last name Cramer NY, and don't forget to check out the show too on Twitter at bsith_podcast, and also on Instagram at Best Seat in the House podcast. So once again, everybody, thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you next week on Best Seat in the House podcast.